Hello and welcome to day 2 of my special projects car pack build I'm releasing all throughout this week. This time we're going to the most powerful car out of all 10, a completely fictional build which I'm sure many of you have wondered about through Gran Turismo's history, like, oh, I wish there was a Huayra race car in the game. Many of us have fond memories of the Zonda LM race car. That's exactly what I wanted to do, but my spin on this build is I wanted this car to feel like it was coming full circle for Pagani, because for those who don't know, the Zonda was inspired by the Mercedes Sauber C11 Le Mans car. So this car goes back to the roots of that because I wanted to make a Huayra LM race car which feels like a Group C car for today in qualifying trim. So running that full crazy amount of qualifying horsepower just to make this an 800-point, 1,000 horsepower monster. But you may be surprised by how well this thing actually handles. So as far as the build, come down of course to the tuning shop, and again, just like with the builds yesterday, I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. So unfortunately you cannot do any weight reduction on this. Thankfully it's only 1,350 kilos anyway. So on the Club Sports section we do have a bore out on the engine. Not exactly necessary, but it is one of those things that once you've done it you can't change it back anyway. The power restrictor is fitted, as is the ballast. Although I'm not really using either of those anyway, I just like to fit those if you need to change it, like for a public lobby, so at least then you can enter your car. You want your racing crank, the fully customized computer, the high RPM turbo to really pump out huge torque and huge horsepower, the fully customized diff. You could go for the body rigidity if you want to. I personally haven't opted to. As far as the racing parts, you want your balance tuning, polished ports. I actually do have anti-lag, but it's not fitted. So I would recommend having that because, again, it does feed into the idea of a qualifying trim because, of course, anti-lag does make the car slightly quicker, but it uses more fuel. So what I would recommend doing is fit it, or buy it, I should say, but don't necessarily fit it unless you're in a race that doesn't have fuel use. So then you can switch between it. Or if you just want to set a good lap, then you could turn it on. You want your racing intercooler, racing air filter, racing silencer, racing manifold, pads, and discs. You could, as always, go for the slotted or the drilled, it doesn't really matter, or even the carbon ceramics if you want to pay a bit more. The racing clutch and flywheel, race suspension, race transmission, the active limited slip diff controller is something that I've gone for. And as far as the tyres, I do have a couple of pairs. I've got the racing softs for when you really want to go all out, and racing hards, which I believe I have fitted at the moment. So that's the point level that you're going to be looking at with that, just under 800, which is kind of perfect for certain career mode events. I do have NOS, or at least I've fitted it in the past, but I don't actually use that for this build, so you don't need it. And again, I have the carbon ceramics also from something I purchased before, but you don't need to do that either if you don't want to. So, once again, this is a build where the community has had their input, even though they didn't know it, so I will flash up on screen the creator of this one in a second. The wide body is fitted. That is a crucial thing. There are a couple of different community members who have made Zonda LM style designs. This one is for the wide body car though, which is what I wanted to go for because I think it suits the build more. And as we go now into the custom section, I will flash up the username and the tags that you can use on all of the builds this week. Now, I know for at least one of these tunes, it didn't have search tags, but as far as the visuals go for this particular one, I haven't changed anything, once again, so I just left it as exactly how they've done it. You can change things if you want to, like you could technically change the rims or the wing, but I like what they've already done, so that's what I've gone for, and of course search that up and give them some love if you want to. Now, as far as my section of this build, which is of course the tuning side, come back into the garage, and then of course this is where the magic happens on the track. Going to the car settings section, slap on your racing hards, or softs, I guess if you want to go all out. For the suspension, we've fitted it, of course, then we've gone for 55mm on the front, 65 on the back for ride height, 6 for anti-roll, 38 for the compression on the dampers, 44 for expansion, 3.65, so a fairly high setting on the frequency, only 1.5 degrees of camber though, probably a lot less than you'd expect for a car with that kind of torque and horsepower. As far as the tow though, we've got it 0.20 in on the rear and 0.5 out on the front. As far as the diff, of course, crucial for a car like this, 45 on initial torque is what I've gone for, 30 for acceleration, 10 for braking. Give that a try. If you don't like it, you could mess around with it, but I think you probably will. The nitrous, like I said, is not fitted currently. For the transmission, I've gone for 390 kilometers an hour, and this thing can definitely get up around 250 miles an hour, just like a Group C car. I have not touched the power restrictor, the ballast, or the output on the ECU. So like I said, fit them so that you've got the option, but you don't actually need to do it if you want to copy what I've done. And then as far as the downforce, I am running a full serving of that. That does kind of work against the horsepower, of course, but trust me, try it before you knock it. It really doesn't need a low aero setting, given how much straight line power it has. And then for the rest, of course, fit your high RPM turbo, race intercooler, all of these racing parts, as you can see. And down here, as you can see, the other stuff is already installed, as I showed you in the shop. So with all of that being fitted, of course, point levels fluctuate up and down with different updates in the game, but you should be looking at around the 800 point region, just under, as you can see here. So it actually is quite a useful car in career mode and potentially online as well. But all that remains is to take it out, of course, to Le Mans to see what it can do. So, this Huayra is guaranteed to be one thing if nothing else, and that is a monster in a straight line. And boy is it, as I already said, even with a full serving of downforce, this can still hit up around 240, 250 miles an hour at Le Mans, and that is with the chicanes. This is a seriously rapid car, but the real thing that I'm proud of with this build is how beautifully it blends together that sheer straight line performance, which really is a huge advantage if you're looking at like a track car, especially if you put this up against race cars, but also combined with how smooth and shockingly forgiving this car is to drive. It actually really does harken back in a nice way to the Zonda LM, which had more of a kind of smooth touring car kind of approach to its handling. This very much does live up to that car's legacy, and exactly as I wanted to, lives up to the sheer performance legacy of a qualifying trim Group C prototype monster from the 90s. So if you do try this build, give the designer, the creator, some love from me, and of course, I hope you enjoy using it and potentially win some races with it. In fact, in terms of competition, this might be the most useful car of all of the 10 that I'm doing this week, at least for 800 point events. So of course, try it out, tell me if you enjoyed it or not, and stick around for the rest of the builds, and of course, check out the ones which I've already done yesterday. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.